Hey everyone, welcome back. You know that feeling like when your mind goes quiet and your body's totally at ease? That's what we're exploring today, inner peace.
Yeah.
And get this, we're not just wishing for it, we're going to learn how to actually create it.
Oh, nice.
Using insights from the Body-Mind Link for Inner Peace by Paul R. Scheel.
What's fascinating about Shields' approach is that he doesn't see inner peace as some mystical state that we stumble upon.
Right.
He presents it as a skill, something we can actually cultivate through practice, just like learning to play an instrument or speak a new language.
Okay, I love that analogy. So how do we start practicing this inner peace skill? Where's the first lesson?
He starts by highlighting something he calls letting go of the fight. And this really resonated with me. He's not just talking about external struggles, but that constant internal battle we often have with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That voice that's always second-guessing, worrying, or comparing ourselves to others.
Oh, I know that voice all too well. It's like a constant loop of self-criticism playing in the background. So how do we let go of the fight with that inner critic?
Well, Shino suggests that the first step is simply becoming aware of it.
Okay.
Notice when that critical voice pops up. And instead of getting caught up in its negativity, try to observe it. With a sense of attachment, like you're a scientist observing an interesting specimen under a microscope.
So it's about creating some distance between ourselves and those negative thoughts, not getting swept away by them.
Exactly. And as we become more aware of those thoughts, we can start to question their validity. Are they really true? Are they helpful? Do they serve us in any way?
Right.
Often when we examine those negative thoughts more closely, we realize that they're based on fear, insecurity, or past experiences that no longer hold us back.
That's so true. It's like those thoughts are just echoes from the past, not accurate reflections of who we are in the present moment.
Precisely. And once we start to challenge those negative thoughts, we create space for more positive and empowering beliefs to emerge.
Okay, I'm already feeling a little lighter just thinking about silencing that inner critic. But I have to ask, what about the physical tension that comes with stress? How does our body play into this whole inner peace equation?
That's where Shields' mind-body connection comes in. He points out that our physical state and our mental state are deeply intertwined.
Okay.
When we're stressed or anxious, our body responds with tension. Clenched jaws, tight shoulders, shallow breathing.
Oh, absolutely. I can feel my shoulders creeping up around my ears just thinking about my to-do list.
Right. And Shields' point is that this physical tension actually feeds back into our mental state, creating a vicious cycle of stress. So one of the keys to cultivating inner peace is to become aware of those physical sensations and learn to release them.
That makes so much sense. It's like our body is giving us clues about what's happening in our minds.
Exactly. And the good news is that we can use our bodies to influence our minds as well. Shield highlights the power of posture. Even simple adjustments like sitting up straight, relaxing your shoulders, and unclenching your jaw can have a surprisingly calming effect.
I've heard about this. It's like tricking your brain into feeling more confident and relaxed, even if you don't quite believe it yet.
Precisely. And it's not just about posture. Shield also talks about the power of conscious breathing. Slowing down your breath, deepening your inhales and exhales, it can quickly shift your physiological state from stress to calm. It's like hitting the reset button on your nervous system.
That's something I've been trying to incorporate into my daily routine. Even just a few deep breaths can make a huge difference. But I'm curious, how do we move beyond just relaxing our bodies? How do we actually quiet that constant mental chatter?
That's where we get into the heart of Shields' process, creating peace of mind. And he breaks it down into several steps. The first, as we've touched on, is relax the body, find a comfortable position, consciously release tension, and focus on your breath.
Okay, so we've relaxed the body, we're breathing deeply. What's next in this creating peace of mind process? How do we actually start quieting the mind?
The next step Shield outlines is what he calls steady breathing. And this really resonated with me. He talks about the power of breathing evenly. With each inhale and exhale the same length. No pauses in between. It sounds simple, but try it for a minute and you'll feel the shift.
You know, it's funny. I've always been a bit skeptical of breathing exercises, like how much can that really change?
Yeah.
But I actually tried this recently when I was feeling super anxious, and I was shocked at how quickly it calmed me down.
It's incredible, isn't it? Shield explains that steady breathing actually helps regulate your heart rate and your nervous system, sending signals to your brain that everything is okay. It's like a physiological hack for reducing stress.
So we've relaxed the body, we're breathing steadily and hopefully feeling a little more grounded. But what about all those thoughts swirling around in our heads? How do we tackle that mental chatter?
That's where quieting the mind comes in. Shield really emphasizes the importance of bringing your awareness to the present moment. Instead of dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, he suggests focusing on what you can see, hear, feel, taste, and smell right now.
Okay, that makes sense, but it sounds incredibly difficult. Our minds are wired to constantly jump around, especially in today's fast-paced world. How do we train ourselves to stay present?
It takes practice,
Yeah.
but Shield offers some incredibly practical tips.
Okay.
One that stood out to me was the idea of controlling your inner voice. Instead of letting it run wild with worries and doubts, imagine you can adjust the volume, the tone,
Mhm.
and even the content of that voice.
So instead of letting my inner critic yell at me, I could turn the volume down, maybe even change the tone to something more gentle and encouraging.
Exactly. It's like you're the director of your own inner dialogue. She'll even suggest picking a specific word or phrase that evokes peace and repeating it silently to yourself, like a calming mantra.
That's a great tip. I can definitely see how that could help create a sense of inner stillness.
Okay, so we've relaxed the body, we're breathing deeply, and we're starting to tame that mental chatter. But is that enough to truly experience inner peace?
Shealy introduces one more powerful tool: mental imagery. He reminds us that for centuries, people have used mental pictures to focus the mind and cultivate a sense of peace.
Ah, like visualizing a peaceful scene. I've definitely heard of that.
Exactly. He suggests imagining things like a flickering candle flame, a serene landscape, or even a favorite vacation spot. You could even create an imaginary comfort room in your mind, filled with all the things that make you feel safe and
I
relaxed.
love that idea of a comfort room. It's like having a mental sanctuary you can escape to whenever you need a break from the chaos.
The key is to find an image that truly resonates with you, something that evokes a sense of peace and tranquility. And whenever your mind starts to wander, gently redirect your attention back to that calming image. This is all so insightful. I'm starting to understand that inner peace isn't just this abstract concept. It's something we can actively cultivate through these tangible techniques. But I have to ask, how do we extend that sense of peace beyond these practices? How do we bring it into our everyday lives, especially when things get stressful?
That's a great question, and one that Sheil addresses directly. He acknowledges that when we try to extend that peaceful feeling for longer periods, our minds tend to revert back to their usual racing state.
So how do we break that cycle? How do we make this inner peace a more lasting experience?
He suggests that the key is consistent practice. It's about weaving these moments of peace and presence into the fabric of our daily lives, learning to catch ourselves when tension arises, and consciously choosing to release it, redirecting our thoughts when they start spiraling down a negative path.
So it's not about achieving some perfect state of constant bliss. It's more about developing those skills to navigate the ups and downs of life with more grace and resilience.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to challenges. And the more we practice these techniques, the easier it becomes to access that inner peace, even in the midst of chaos.
This is incredibly empowering. But I'm curious, how do we integrate these practices into our busy lives? It's one thing to set aside time for dedicated practice, but how do we stay connected to that inner peace throughout the day?
Shilley emphasizes the importance of one moment and one thought at a time. It's not about overhauling your entire life. It's about making small, conscious shifts throughout the day.
So it's like finding those little pockets of peace in the midst of our daily routines, maybe taking a few deep breaths before a stressful meeting, visualizing our comfort room when we feel overwhelmed, or practicing gratitude while we're stuck in traffic.
Exactly. It's about weaving those threads of peace and presence throughout the tapestry of your day. And over time, those small moments start to add up, creating a more peaceful and fulfilling way of life.
This is so inspiring. We've covered so much ground already. From understanding the mind-body connection to exploring practical techniques for quieting the mind and cultivating inner peace, but I feel like there's still so much more to uncover.
You're absolutely right. And as we move into our final segment, we'll explore how to extend that inner peace outwards, how to bring that sense of calm and presence into our relationships and interactions with the world around us.
So we've been talking about cultivating inner peace, but I'm really curious about how that translates into our relationships with others. Can we actually radiate that sense of peace outwards, and if so, how?
That's a question that Scheele addresses beautifully. He suggests that as we cultivate inner peace, it naturally starts to ripple outwards, influencing how we interact with the world around us.
It's like that idea of filling your own cup first so you have something to pour from.
Exactly. As we become more centered and grounded within ourselves, we're less reactive to external triggers. We're more patient, more
Mm.
compassionate, and more understanding in our dealings with others.
It makes sense. If we're constantly battling inner turmoil, it's hard to show up as our best selves in relationships.
Absolutely. And the beautiful thing is, as we interact with others from this place of inner peace, it can have a transformative effect on our relationships. We're less likely to get triggered, less likely to engage in conflict, and more likely to communicate with empathy and understanding.
That sounds ideal. But what about those inevitable conflicts that arise in relationships? Even when we're trying our best to stay grounded, disagreements are bound to happen. How do we navigate those situations peacefully?
Well, Shield reminds us that even when conflicts arise, we can choose how we respond. He suggests bringing those same principles of self-awareness and mindfulness into our interactions, even when things get heated.
So instead of reacting impulsively, we take a pause, breathe deeply, and try to understand the other person's perspective.
Precisely. It's about listening with an open heart, speaking with kindness and respect, and finding ways to resolve conflict constructively.
This all ties back to that idea of letting go of the fight, not just within ourselves, but also in our interactions with others.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected and that our actions and words have a ripple effect. When we choose peace, we're not just benefiting ourselves, we're contributing to a more harmonious world.
That's such a powerful reminder. So, we've explored practical techniques for cultivating inner peace, and we've talked about how that peace can ripple outwards, influencing our relationships and interactions. But before we wrap up, are there any final takeaways from Shield's work that you think would be helpful for our listeners?
You know, one thing that really stood out to me was Shield's emphasis on acceptance. He reminds us that we can't control everything in life, and that struggling against what is only creates more suffering.
So, instead of resisting or trying to force things to be different, we practice acceptance, surrendering to the present moment.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean we become passive or complacent. It simply means letting go of the inner turmoil that comes from resisting what is, and instead focusing our energy on what we can influence.
This has been such an incredible journey. We've explored the depths of inner peace, from understanding its foundations to navigating the challenges that arise along the way.
It's been a pleasure diving into this with you. And as we conclude, I want to encourage you to reflect on what resonated most with you today. What practices or insights are you inspired to try? What small steps can you take to bring more peace and presence into your own life?
That's a wonderful question to ponder. And remember, even the smallest actions can create a ripple effect, leading to a more peaceful and fulfilling life, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into inner peace. May you find joy and tranquility on your journey.
Until next time, be well and peace be with you.